Thank you all for tuning in to another edition of Outside the Shop with me, your host, Daryl D. Lane, as always, where I get to talk about everything that I normally don't get to talk about on my regular sports podcast, Barbershop Sports Talk, which you guys can all find on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasting apps from. So, we have on the agenda today, got a lot of stuff, but first, check on the description down below. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, how can they adjust if they face the Los Angeles Rams again in the postseason? Also, in this 2-minute clip on YouTube as well, both are 2-minute clips, just around there. What you look for in a physically talented QB. How do you know a QB is physically talented? Because I think a lot of the times when we think of physical talent, we think of either just pure arm strength or we think of running, but there's so much more. So I get into that. That's about a 2-minute vid. So check that out and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, just a side note, next podcast, gonna have my guy on, Ben Karen, host of Sports Call podcast, and we will be previewing week 4 of the NFL and week 5 of college football. So that will be a dandy. So first, here's what we have. NBA COVID vaccines. Kyrie Irving, Andrew Wiggins, Bradley Beal, and I'm forgetting his name. Kneel for the national anthem during the bubble for the Orlando Magic. Isaac, so something like that for the Magic, but he's, ancillary compared to the other 3 guys. And the NBA is at 90% vaccination rate. And it just come down that if they're missing games due to COVID, then, they're going to withhold game checks. They're not going to get paid. And particularly, this is really important for 2 people, Kyrie Irving and Andrew Wiggins, because Kyrie Irving plays in New York City, Andrew Wiggins plays in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and both of those guys have strong COVID mandates where you can't go to anywhere public, you can't go to your job, right? And that goes for everybody if you are not vaccinated. It is illegal for you to do otherwise. I believe there's like religious exemptions and stuff like that. Maybe there's a medical exemption, but those guys are not falling under that. Andrew Wiggins got denied a religious exemption. So this is dangerous territory, hey, people talk about player empowerment. They want to live in certain cities. Kyrie Irving would rather live in Boston than or live in New York City, live in Brooklyn, than live in Boston or live in Cleveland. You know what? In Boston and Cleveland, they don't have those type of COVID mandates. Just saying. So I think that's interesting as well when you look at all of it. But this is going to be interesting. This is going to be very, very interesting, particularly because Kyrie Irving, the Brooklyn Nets are my favorite to win the NBA championship. If he's not playing home games, that is not good. That is not good. Could you imagine if it's Game 7 of the NBA Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers and Kyrie can't play a Game 7 at home? Could you imagine that? Because he's unvaccinated? Like, they got to get that figured out. I understand personal privacy. I understand everybody listening has their own feelings about COVID and the vaccine. I'm not here to get into all that. But at some point, there has to be a meeting of the minds, because if you're not an asset, you're a liability. They're just saying now. And if Kyrie's not playing for home games, then that's an issue. And let's say Golden State made the NBA Finals. I believe that would mean that he couldn't play against them at all in the finals. Or if they play, let's say they play the New York Knicks in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Imagine the Brooklyn Nets, the 1 seed, the New York Knicks, the 8th seed. Kyrie Irving couldn't play for any single game. That's insane. So the Brooklyn Nets, they have to get that resorted fairly quickly, because that's going to cause an issue for their team. LeBron's come out. He's been vaccinated, saying you should. I know Bradley Beal has said he doesn't think he should get vaccinated because of natural immunity. I get everybody has their own opinions on it. But at the end of the day, this is a basketball issue. It's a sports issue. And if you can't play and help your team because you're not getting vaccinated, then they might have to look at trading. That's kind of where we're at. Brady versus Belichick. So Seth Wickersham's coming out with a book. And basically in the book, one of the major headlines that have been percolating is that when Tom Brady was going to leave to go to Tampa Bay, Belichick did not meet him in person, I believe, or there was no call. That kind of rubbed Tom the wrong way. And I think that kind of gets into how their relationship deteriorated. It kind of talked about that in some of the quotes. And maybe that they never had the relationship that many people thought. Because I know a lot of times you think when you have a lot of success, right? People think, oh, they must love each other. They must really get along. Some people thought that about Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. They must like each other. Turns out Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons don't really like each other. You can be around a whole lot of people. There are brothers and sisters who are around each other the whole time. They hate each other. There are husbands and wives that are around each other all the time, and they hate each other. Just because you can be around somebody, have a lot of success at them, you guys are both good at your job, and you guys can coexist, does not mean you like each other. Does not mean you have warm feelings. It can mean you disdain each other. It can mean you hate each other. It can mean you have animosity towards each other. So I think that's always an interesting tidbit, because I think everybody thinks, oh, just because, they work well together, they made a lot of money, right? They had a lot of rings, a lot of good memories. That means they're friends, right? That is not always the case. And we know Bill Belichick is as cut and as ruthless as come. So Jalen Reger, for wide receiver for TCU, and this is going to be the NF version of the show, an argument with a fan, and it was crazy. And I'm just going to read this because this was just crazy to me. So fan comes in, right? I'm just going to read this, and you guys can just Google Jalen Reger argues with fan. It'll pop up. But here's what I'm going to read it. So this is what he said. So the fan says, if you get 13 plus points on fan, I'll buy you a Big Mac. You suck, man. Wow. Jalen Reger says, N-word, F, drop your addy. Yeah, doing all that talking. Y'all effing fans talk too damn much. And then he's like, I'll knock your soft ass out. And then and then this kills him with the fan says. The fan says, man, relax. You're not gonna get a Big Mac talking to me like that. And then Jalen Reger says, yeah, now it's relaxed, you B. I'll beat you the F up. And then he says, Daddy soft A. And I'll end all this B ass talking quick. And then ends with, man, aren't you 5'10"? Relax or something. I'm telling Serena, and I don't know who Serena is. I don't know if that's a mom, a girlfriend, a grandma. I don't know who Serena is. Like, you're 5'10". What are you gonna do, my guy? That is crazy. Fans are at large. I don't know. I feel like if you talking like that, you might as well want smoke. That, to me, that's just crazy. It's funny, obviously, even respond to something like that, because obviously that fan's just trying to get on his nerves, get under his skin, and that is exactly what he did. Sometimes just block. Don't respond, right? Don't read your comments. Skip Bayless does that. He does not read any of his comments. And I've read a lot of Skip Bayless' comments on Twitter. People say, I hope your wife dies. People say a lot of disgusting and evil stuff. Sometimes don't read your Twitter mentions. Don't read your Instagram comments. Just don't read it. Don't pay attention to it. Because that person's going to, either you respond to them or not. Next, here's what we have. So for college football, there is going to be a change. Obviously, in college football, if there is a targeting call, player gets suspended for 2 quarters. That can be they're out for the whole game, and also it's a 15-yard penalty. They're looking at different ways to mitigate that and change that. I think that for the NFL, you're not ejecting players for targeting in the NFL. These are kids, you're running at high speeds and you're trying to fit things in a certain window. And a lot of the times it's not intentional. It just happens in the game. And I think you shouldn't punish these kids and take them out of the game. I think that's crazy. You can keep the 15-yard penalty, but ejecting them out of the game, I've always thought that changes the game. We've seen in the last couple of college football playoffs where Cernowski, who's one of the middle linebackers, Clemson Tigers, he's got ejected for years. I think he got ejected against LSU. He got ejected when they played Ohio State, I believe. And, it's just a bad look. It's not good, right? That it changes the tone of the game. It changes the integrity of the game. You have star players on the defensive side of the ball going out. They're not really trying to head them. Like, these guys, they're not trying to get kill shots, dudes. That's just not the way it is. That's kind of being coached out the game all together. And lastly, Manny Pacquiao, he is retiring from. Now, I do want to talk about this really quickly. So Pacquiao was 62 with 39 KOs. He's going to run for president also, by the way, in May. Manny Pacquiao was one of the most underrated boxers of all time. I think his era coincided with, they were both in their primes at the same time, both relatively around the same age. At the super fight and Floyd Mayweather. I think people have realized how truly close I was to Floyd Mayweather. There was a time when Floyd was in his prime, and Floyd fought Hoya, and he won the split decision, tough boxing, right? And then Manny Pacquiao faced Oscar De La Hoya, and he tears him apart. I think he knocked him out, tears him apart, right? Floyd was saying what's Floyd Floyd's best thing with his defense is his shoulder roll. Pacquiao was a southpaw, so that goes into the shoulder roll, like you're going right into the punches now. Pacquiao is so underrated. He was so good, and he's fought for such a long time, even beyond when Floyd is retired. He stayed about 4 or 5 more years, and he takes, I believe, was ranked 3rd at his weight class in the world, and takes him out of almost 40 years of age. Like, Pacquiao is a warrior, one of the most underrated boxers. I truly believe this. I think there's a reason why Floyd did not want to fight in the heart of his career, in the heart of Floyd's prime. And Floyd did not want to do that because he feared Manny. I know there's a lot of stuff with steroids, and that's part of the why. I think Floyd was concerned about Pacquiao. He waited till they were both kind of out of their prime when it made the most sense. And even in that fight, he did not want to let Pacquiao get those punches, clenched him up the entire time. Pacquiao was a problem. He's a warrior, and props to a great career, one of the best to it. And that's all we have for this edition of Outside the Shop. Everybody, have a great